Hi, this is David Use again for another video on genealogy basics. Uh, Today I'm going to cover something a little more serious. This is the standards and ethics of genealogy, and I do not want you to turn off this video just because you think that this might get totally boring. It's serious stuff. Don't turn this video off and let's get through it. Um, I will try to keep it as brief as possible. I will give you links to get this more in depth. I'm going to touch it as quickly as possible because this is really important, and more advanced classes will systematically go through this, and especially to give you examples and get you to understand more thoroughly the genealogy standards. Um, but there is a lot of material out there, and I just don't want to go and repeat it all. Um, Under ethics, I do also want to cover copyrights and taking care in sharing your images with others. But let me hit this. And first of all, there is a book out here, and I will say this is been one of the most difficult videos for me to make because this is real serious stuff, and I don't want to screw it up. Um, and I've gone through this a couple times. This is about the fourth or fifth take. Uh, so I'm going to keep it light. I want you to know about this. I want you to know that there's a lot more work. But if you want to have quality, um, you know, industry standard genealogy research, you need to understand the genealogy proof standard. And it is described in this book called Genealogy Standards. It's written by the Board of Certification of Genealogists, abbreviated as just BCG. Uh, you don't have to buy the book. In fact, you could get the book and check it out for free through the Garfield County Public Library with the Hoopla app. And at the minimum, you should check it out once, take a look at it, and flip through it. It's, you know, not a huge book, but there is a lot of important information in here. I have a copy of the book and refer to it often. And in this book, under the genealogy proof standard, there is 90 different elements that uh, fall under many different headings, but the general, the genealogy proof standard, um, it's is one critical element, and it is covered in the first chapter of the book. And I covered a little bit of this under, the topic of how much research is enough. And what we talked before was about reasonably exhaustive research, uh, testing your information, and then resolving conflicts of evidence. Um, I'll hit those extremely quickly here. You want to do reasonably exhaustive research because you want to check to see that all evidence is agreeing, all the information, all the different sources. You want to get as best possible to get independent sources of information. Um, but you want, one piece of evidence does not, uh, make a fact, um, you know, the right answer uh, on your genealogy question. So um, you want to do enough research to make sure everything is lining up and that there aren't any conflicts. Then you want to sift through all of your information and test it and analyze it and correlate it, put it on the timeline. Make sure that it's all lining up and consistent. And then if there is any conflicts within your evidence, is that you resolve that conflict. And that's either, getting the best, you know, an original source by a firsthand observer to maybe that overrides some other source, like a census, which you do until the 1940 census, you do not know who was the informant. Um, it could have been anybody. So, you know, a original record by somebody with a firsthand account is going to override some census information that might be a little wonky and conflicting. Um, so um, you go through that, or maybe you have a good explanation of the conflict. As I talked about, I had one relative that suddenly, when they got married to their second husband, right about that time, suddenly all the sources indicated that she was 5 years younger, until her husband passed away, and then suddenly she was 5 years older. And it turned out that being 5 years younger than she really was put her age in line with her husband's until his death. And then suddenly the records switch back. So, there might have been a story or a reason why uh, this ancestor of mine had changed her age temporarily just to be as socially acceptable. So, anyway, uh, let me get back to this. Sorry for the rabbit trail here. The So we go back up here. The third item here, um, right here, we didn't cover before. We've only touched on it in our class that uh, the next level that you need to work to is being citing all your sources and citing all the information and how they contribute to answering your question, genealogical question. And um, again, I'm not teaching citations in this class, but I wanted to make you aware that your next step is to start learning to do that. We talked about, what's the next best thing that you can do this, and on your underneath this uh, complete accurate citations is that um, you will annotate images or make sure that there's attached the image uh, citation where you've gotten that image. Um, but the last item under genealogical proof standards is that, again, we didn't talk about this earlier, but that you have a soundly reasoned, coherently written conclusion based on the strongest available evidence. So that you write up, especially um, um, support of facts that might have been very convoluted, or you had to go through a lot of research and maybe a lot of indirect evidence. You want to write out your thinking and how you arrived at your conclusion and why you believe that you're have the right fact for that to answer that question of yours. Uh, so the that the real important piece is that genealogy proof standard. But in this book, there are other chapters that are extremely important. There are standards for documenting, standards for researching, um, and then standards for writing. And um, this is, all real important for doing professional quality genealogy. And so, make sure that you go through this and uh, and look at the book go through it. I mean, I know it can be dry. I'm telling you right now, there's no humor in the book. Um, so don't expect to be like genealogy standards for dummies. Yeah, sorry, there's no light book for you like that. Um, so then there's a whole another element, and it's also contained within that book, the genealogy standards. But it is also available online, which is the Genealogist Code of Ethics. Um, that online, and I'm going to try to pull it up here. I think I got it here. Okay, yes. So the BCG goes through this. Now, a lot of this has to do, I think it's worth going through even when you are doing your own personal research. Uh, it still talks about quality of your work and uh, not misrepresenting any of your work to other people. Uh, but that in these ethics, uh, it's particularly important to read and commit to these ethics for work that you're doing for free or pro bono for other people or for pay when you are now moving into being a professional genealogist. But you should go through it. I'm not going to go through this, or this would be an extremely long video. But it talks about protecting the public, and once you read through it, you're going to see a lot of it's very, um, you know, very obvious. Being honest, being transparent, being upfront with the people that you're working for. Um, then to protect the client, and that's it talks about confidentiality and all the types of being real upfront and working with a client professionally, and that you're not going to go and publish information from your work without talk working with your client and making sure that they understand what's at stake and getting their permission. Um, acting as to protect the profession. And, this is particularly important, especially after some history where there were some scammers out there, and there continue to be scammers. Um, you want to make sure that if you're working, again, even pro bono, that you are acting as a professional genealogist, um, and that we are protecting all of genealogists and their reputation collectively and add credibility. And then the last one, I think this is real important, is looking here at the working to protect DNA samples. And this is one that often is overlooked by people because they get real excited that they're working on their trees and they have relatives and they get DNA from relatives and they don't go through all the right steps. As soon as you leave yourself and go and work with the DNA of other people, you've got to treat them like a client. You say it's family, but there's some steps here that are real important around working with DNA. Um, you know, make sure those people know when you're working with them, the consequences and uh, the potential risks of using their DNA. It might uncover a story that they don't want to hear about. Um, these could be real problematic in the family. It might, as it points out here, you might not only uncover unanticipated relatives, but maybe some medical conditions, unexpected ethical backgrounds. Uh, you know, there's a lot of issues here that DNA could really spin up. And then there has to be an understanding of confidentiality with that person, and that that person where you're getting the DNA is the person that owns their own, they own their DNA. You have to understand they should also own the story and who finds out. So this opens up a whole slew of ethical problems here. Is that, what about if you do find um, a story that the family has never heard about, misattributed uh, parentage, something like this? That goes right back to the person who gave the DNA. It's their call. It's their DNA. That DNA led you to this story. Uh, that person is the person that needs to decide whether or not that story gets shared with the rest of the family. And if they don't want to share that story, you have an obligation to be quiet about it and uh, follow professional level standards, interacting even with family around DNA. So, um, also, you need to keep all DNA information uh, confidential and uh, protect it from anybody else. And you just don't share it without working with the person who provided the DNA and getting their consent. Uh, for instance, I have DNA samples, but my agreement with that relative is that I will not talk to anybody else contacting about a match unless I talk to the person with the DNA first, and uh, going through and getting agreement what can be shared or not shared. Um, so anyway, um, on I will also give you a longer list. Cindy's list, of course, is a great place for information. These are other people who've written up genealogy standards. But in here also are some just etiquette pieces, minding your manners and family history. Uh, so this might be a good place if you're really interested in seeing how some other people have put together their thoughts on ethics and genealogy. So let me jump back here, presentation. And in the description of this video, I will put all these links in there so you can get at them. I do want to spend a little time talking about copyrights. You need to be careful. Uh, original. We Everybody has these copyrights, and you have to be careful with all these repositories. Most of those images are with the repositories under contract, and being under contract, they often have restrictions. And a perfect example are these images on family search that can only be viewed at a family history center or the family history library. Uh, those just don't assume that you can go and share anything you find and download from a repository found on the internet, that you can just share it willy nilly. Uh, in most cases, you really can't do that. So before sharing, check the terms and conditions of each repository for their what you can or can't do with the images that you find there. Um, for instance, and every image that you see in all my class presentations, I've double checked and dug in, and I had to find images where I had permission to either share it because it was public domain, or they had a educational exception that I could share that information or that photo. All the photos that you see throughout this, either I found them in the public, listed as public domain, open and free for the public to use, or they were a lot of them are stock images that were provided by Microsoft PowerPoint to be used in the presentations. So you know, you double check, especially around photographs. Um, you know, on here, way at the bottom is uh, one site that I really like, the Legal Genealogist. She has a blog there. That's Judy Russell. Uh, she has excellent articles. I highly recommend her site anyway, but she has a lot of different blogs around different copyright situations. And she even writes about situations where if you find a photo like in a store, can I share this image out in the public? And you know, her answer is no. You don't have necessarily permission. You know, it might be a 1880 picture of a family. Do you have permission to share it? Well, you know, yeah, technically you need to be part of the rights should have been passed down to you because it's an original piece of work that somebody took, or maybe a photographer took of a family. So, you know, you know, before you share, just check and make sure that it's okay to share. I My practice with my family is I share links. I try to always find images that are uh, available through Family Search. I tell them you can open up a free account, and here's the links to those images if you really want to take a look at them. Yeah, even with my family, if I had to go to the Family History Center, I absolutely do not share images from the Family History Center that weren't available in regular Family Search because I'm trying to make sure I honor the contracts that are with Family Search. Um, One nuance here is the information that you extract from the information from the images is not copyrighted. You know, a birth date or this a birth date, a name, you know, the cause of death. That information is not copyrighted um, because that information wasn't created by that person or entity, you know, the county. So if you do a transcription or an abstract of what you found from the image, go ahead and share that information all you want. Um, there is no copyright around that. So it just has to do with these images that the documents created by an agency, a county, could fall under copyright laws or restrictions, depending on how they um, are dealing with it. Now, um, if they've put it out for the public, you know, you're probably okay. You know, something off of there's these lawsuits that have been out recently. They're trying to get old records, you know, the 100-year plus records to be put out for the public to use. Um, but there are some resources if you want to look more and see information about copyrights. Um, you know, there's a link here to a info sheet um, that was put out by Genealogy Bargains, and then another article from Roots Web, and then the legal genealogists. These are all the articles or blogs that Judy Russell's written around copyright. There's some very interesting ones there, worth you know flipping through those at some time. But in doubt, don't share the image. So anyway, that's enough lecturing and about standards and ethics. Go and enjoy yourself, and I'll talk to you soon.